So my name's Aaron. I've been playing League of Legends since 2009, whenever the game came out. I've been playing competitive League of Legends in like the gold elo for about 7 or 8 years now, almost exclusively ADC. Um, but that's about it. So I'm gonna pass it over to Sin, and he'll tell you a little bit about himself.
Yeah, I'm Sin. I have been playing since season two. I've been mostly a jungle main around gold to plat MMR. I've played competitive in gold, plat, and low diamond MMRs, and I've got competitive experience in support, AD carry, top, and jungle. Mostly jungle, but a little bit of everything other than mid.
All right. So this is going to be our top laners tier list. I've set it up so far. So we've got the tiers of superbly broken, always a solid choice, better than some other options, can be kind of troll, don't pick unless you're a one trick, and then FF at 20. So it's pretty self-explanatory. We're just going to go through, talk about each one, and figure out where we think they go. Figure out what champions we think are the best. So Aatrox is the first one. You got any strong feelings about Aatrox?
I feel like some people might say he's superbly broken, but I'm gonna kind of put him in the always a solid choice. I feel like he does really, really well. I think he's pretty easy to pick up, but I do think that there are some like meta champions that he definitely does not play very well into right now. But yeah, that's kind of where I would put him.
I actually agree 100%. I don't think that he's like broken, but I think that he's good into a lot of stuff, and he's good at chasing people down. He does good damage if he's ahead. He can be like pseudo tanky. I think he definitely fits in, always a solid choice 100%. So the
Okay,
next
good.
one is Akali. So Akali, I actually think is like a don't play top lane unless you're a one trick.
I completely agree. I don't think that you should ever play that champion unless you are a one trick. I think Akali is definitely a good champion, but a lot more viable in the mid lane than I think she is in the like a top lane tank meta. I just think she falls short. Yeah, and I just think unless you're gonna put 400, 500 games on her, um, it's probably not worth an investment.
I completely agree. Okay, so Akshan. I actually really like Akshan as a champion, but he falls into that role of being like a range top laner, and then that eliminates one of like your tanky boys. So I feel like he just can be kind of troll because I don't think he's a bad champion, but I think it kind of forces your team into playing other stuff. So what do you think?
I think for competitive, I'm gonna say that he's kind of troll. I think I would actually say in solo queue, I wouldn't say like don't pick unless you're a one trick, but I would kind of put him in that philosophy of I think the people that main him do really, really well. I actually think he's pretty strong in the meta, but I think he's only picked by one tricks.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like if you're playing comp, probably just don't play him. If you're playing solo queue and you want to one trick him, sure. I definitely feel like he's just is always going to look a little inflated by the fact that he's only played by one tricks.
hmm
And I actually think he struggles against a lot of the meta, but he like destroys a lot of the off meta.
Yeah, I think that. So I don't think he's as bad of a top lane pick as like Akali is. So that's why I don't really think that he's like a D. But because I think that there's certain scenarios where it's like the melee top laners just can't do anything against him if he gets like a matchup the person knows how to play. But again, I think it's one of those. It's like Quinn. It's like a better Quinn. It's you can play some stuff and like win lane with it, but it's not. There's just so many better things that you can play for your team.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think he's not a great value engine. He's just like if you're a better, then you win, and if you're not, you're gonna lose.
Mhm.
And I think he really struggles against things like Ornn, Maokai, Jax, Malphite, some of these like champions that are just really, really, really strong right now. So I don't think he's very blind pickable either.
Mhm. Okay. So next we have Camille. So I actually kind of want Camille to be our first super broken. What do you think?
I I see her more as a little bit of always a solid choice.
Mhm.
Um, in this meta, I think Camille had a meta last year. Maybe it was the year before, where she was just the best champion in the game. Um, but I will say, I think Camille is a champion that is played by more than her one tricks. I think the people that put a lot of time in her, she's probably S tier.
Hmm.
But if you're only playing her, like let's say you have a champ pool of like 5, 6 champions, she's probably more like high A. I think if there was like an A plus, I'd put her like top of A. But
Okay.
I don't know if she's quite S. I think she's close.
Yeah, I think she's definitely better than like Aatrox. That's the only one we have up there right now. So I think that
Yeah.
she's mobile. She can pick people off really easily. She's like a good duelist. Like I'm okay with her being top A. I think that makes sense. And if we get closer to the bottom, we don't have anybody S yet. Then I'm gonna throw her an S. We'll see
Yeah,
how we
I
get through
I
the rest of
agree.
them.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so Cassiopeia. Cassiopeia is actually one that so I put it on here because it's not like meta, but it's played enough that I felt like it was fine throwing it onto the top laners list. As far as it goes, I'm feeling like a B, like that she's better than some other options. But I'm not like super strongly opinionated on that though.
I I'll agree with B. I think her one problem is she's only played by like one trick Cassiopeia tops. I think the win rate on it is probably like pretty disgusting. But if only one tricks are playing it and they're only playing it into good matchups, that's probably about where I'd expect her to be. I think
Hmm.
if you're like a mid laner, autofill top, and you play Cassiopeia mid, go for it.
Hmm.
Other than that, I think it's like a cheesy pick that I think it probably is not as bad as some people might think it is,
Hmm.
but I definitely think you're really stretching. Well, how would I put it? She's a champion that has very little to transferable skills between her and other top laners.
Hmm.
So if you're looking to have an actual champ pool and like play more than Cassiopeia, I probably wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd definitely say there's some better options.
Mhm. Okay, cho'gath. So right now, like with this current season, I feel like he's a solid A. I think that whenever I see he's almost always useful. Like I very rarely see him where he's like not doing things.
Yeah, I agree. I would say he might be on the lower end of A, but I would definitely say he's 100% an A. I think his sustain in lane just makes it really hard for him to be punished, which means you're just consistently getting out of lane phase doing okay. As long as you're doing like right items, right runes, I think he's just an unkillable beast.
Mhm.
I think Heartsteel helped him out a lot and really put him back into the meta.
Yeah, he gets to a point that a lot of champions just can't kill him. Like if you let the game go too long, he does a bunch of damage and he has 9,000 health, and it takes you like a minute and a half to whittle him down.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. And the people that do the EW max on cho'gath is actually very little counterplay. I think a lot of people incorrectly max Q second just out of like probably habit from the old days. But like the EW max, I know does really really good work. You just become an unkillable monster with like a 4 second silence. Really big disruptor in team fights. I would say as long as your laning phase isn't complete crap,
As long
this
as you don't
champion
get
really.
like flame horizon.
Yeah, as long as you're not getting like Flame Horizon, I think this champion is like just really, really solid and really hard to deal with.
Okay. So on Darius, I actually want to hear your opinion of Darius before I say anything about him, just to see. I don't want to sway your opinion.
I think Darius is overhyped. I
Okay.
would put Darius top of B. I think people treat Darius like he's a lot better than he is. I think Darius is like a very typical like win lane lose game champion. He has a very hard time getting to 5 stacks in team fights
Mhm.
to actually get to the point where he can carry a team fight, and I think that's his like biggest weakness is he's not a great split pushing champion. He'll lose a lot of 1v1s trying to get to 5 stacks against like the Camille's and the like Fioras and these other champions. And then in team fights, it's just getting to 5 stacks is so rough for him that I feel like he can leave lane phase 4-0 and just not carry games.
Mhm.
So yeah, I would say top of B.
So I'm actually pretty close to you. I was gonna say C, and my reasoning for it is basically that like he does have his apprehend where he can like pull someone in for CC, but if he doesn't land that and he doesn't have ghost up, he doesn't stick on people and he doesn't do anything if he's not like mega fed. So it's like a Darius can carry, but you like need the enemy team to stand there and let you smack them. He just doesn't he doesn't like take over games unless the enemy is letting him take over games. Is what it feels like most of the time.
Yeah, I think um I would say I could say bottom of B. I think bottom of B. I don't think Darius will ever be troll just because in lower MMRs anyway, I don't think Darius will ever be troll.
Because he's
Hi-
still a strong champion.
yep.
He's not like bad.
Yep, it's just the ability to stick on to people. I think he's weirdly enough kind of S tier against certain team comps in certain games. I
Mhm,
think there are certain games where Darius just is playing against like three tanks. He gets to 5 stacks and he murders everyone with bleed and
mhm.
his ulti. But in your average game where there's not a lot of tanks, I think he really struggles to get stacks up, yeah. And I think if you're not leaving lane face with a gold lead, you just go next most of the time, or
Mhm.
pray you get carried.
Okay, so put him bottom of B for now. So Dr. Mundo, this might be my first like where we largely disagree. I think Dr. Mundo is a don't pick unless you're a one trick. And my entire reasoning is that so he fills the same niche as Cho'gath where he's just like a health mega tank, except Cho'gath has like a giant true damage ultimate, a silence, and then a knockup that's like on like a 6 second cooldown or something. And he feels like a worse version of Cho. Like if you're going to play him, I feel like you should just play Cho'gath instead. So I want to put him in like don't pick unless you're a one trick.
I'm gonna say I agree with you. Um, I think the champion is broken, but I think the champion is only broken in the hands of a one trick.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I would say power level. I think he has the power level of the A tier champions,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that's only on people that just commit games to playing Mundo. I think Mundo lane phase is a lot more skill expressive than old Mundo with the rework, with the way that his like E works and other things. You have to be a little smarter about your trades.
Mm-hmm.
But he is a champion that once he hits level 6, I feel like it is so hard to kill that champion for the rest of the game, which means you're at least not bleeding gold.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think power level, I'd put him comparative to A. But yeah, I would say just don't play him unless you're gonna one trick him.
So I will say I'd rather have a Mundo on my team top than an Akali though.
Yeah,
It-
if
it-
you're comparing Mundo to the other tank value engine options top, I think he is one of the worst ones because he does is soak damage.
Mhm,
Um, but I think Mundo, even against anti-heal, can just become the most unkillable champion in the game. And in lower MMRs, is like I'd say like plat and below, where people don't have great target selection, people will just soak like Mundo soaks like 7,000 damage in a team fight.
mhm.
Um, despite and that's where I would say lower MMRs, I think he's probably just an A. Higher MMRs though, I would say I definitely like unless you're one tricking, just don't bother.
Mhm. All right, so Fiora, I have a strong opinion whenever it comes to champions that don't do anything besides damage. If you don't do anything besides damage and you have to be fed to be useful, then just play something else. So I don't think that she's a bad champion because I think that if you're good at her, you can like out split push and out 1v1, out duel a lot of people and a lot of champions. Like even ones you're supposed to lose, right? Like she can outduel like a Jax if she times her parry. She can outduel like a Lowy. She can outduel Darius's if like she plays it better than the other person. But she's still a like a 0-5 Fiora is gonna do nothing besides kill minions. So I don't think that she's like bad, but I don't think that she's higher than a C. I think that she's can be kind of troll.
I think she's D, to be honest. So the thing about Fiora is I think Fiora is only good in the hands of like a diamond plus master plus player where they're just really good mechanically. I actually watched a video this morning about a guy that could proc Fiora ultimate in less than like 0.4 seconds,
Is it the
like
one
the
where he
entire
flashes
thing.
and stuff?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I've
I've seen
seen
that too.
It's so obviously, and there are people that can consistently pull that combo off in less than a second.
Mhm.
There are break points on Fiora's build where she deals like 80% of someone's max health if she procs all four, essentially.
Mhm.
Um, and so yeah, definitely in the hands of an expert, I think she's great. In the hands of anyone else, I do agree.
Yeah,
I
it's
think there are
basically
champions that do what she does a lot better than she does and
mhm,
provides more than she does.
yeah, it's basically like if you know every matchup, you can win matchups that Fiora is not supposed to win. But if you're not that guy, then you probably just shouldn't play her.
Yep. If you're not willing to put in the time and the effort on a champion and you just want to like blind a champion and play them in ranked, I think you probably just never touch Fiora.
Yeah, same. Okay, so Gangplank. Um, I don't have a strong opinion on Gangplank, to be honest. Do you have a strong opinion on him?
I have a strong opinion that doesn't fit very well into this tier list. I think Gangplank is a Z tier champion. I think
Okay.
Gangplank is the best top laner in the game in the hands of an expert.
Hmm.
Um, I think I would equate him to like Lee Sin. I think Lee Sin is consistently always good in the hands of someone that's good on Lee Sin.
Hmm.
Um, I would say he's probably B tier in general,
Hmm.
maybe top of C. Um, but I think his base combos that are not fancy are still very valuable. I
Yeah.
think his global presence is really good. I think in the hands of like a average player, he's gonna be okay. But I think in the hands of like if you were to master a champion for top lane, I think Gangplank is the champion to like master. And I think he can win almost every matchup. He scales really hard. There are only a few matchups you really don't want to play as Gangplank.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think he's probably for your average player B or C.
I feel like I feel about the same. Like I said, I don't have a super strong opinion on Gangplank. He sort of fits into that doesn't do much besides damage role, but like I'd rather have him than a Fiora. I'd rather have him than an Akshan. Um, I'm fine with going like
His wave clears, I would say bottom of B because his wave clear is literally like the best in the game. He
mhm.
two barrels every wave.
And the
Um,
the global ultimate can like completely sway other lanes too. Like a good like
yep,
level 7 ultimate from Gangplank on bot lane can turn like a losing bot lane into a winning bot lane. So he does have that over other champions.
yep. And I think I know his win rate is like 50% average plat plus. It's probably below that in gold or around 50% in gold. But I know his like masters tier plus win rate is like 55 plus. Like this champion is definitely a skill, like gets better with skill. Um, but if someone were to say one tricking one champion for top lane, I think Gangplank is like the champion for sure.
Yeah, I don't think he's a
So
bad one. I think that he's one that like if you get to where you're really good at him, he can like take over a game if he gets to the point that he like has his items that he needs.
yep, the new Essence Reaver build is just so effective. He gets his wave clear in so fast, comparatively to other champions. I feel like if you're willing to sit back and kind of wait to scale, he's going to do that for you for sure.
So on the next one we have Garen, and my opinion of Garen changes based on the match, right? So some matches where I'm just getting ran down over and over again, I feel like he's super broken, and then some matches where like your team is working together and he just runs in and dies, I feel like he's like kind of troll. So I'm between an S and a C, and I'm pretty okay with putting him anywhere in between.
I would say if you're talking golden below, I
Hmm.
think he's always a solid choice, probably right below Camille. If you're talking above, like Plat Plus, I think you're talking about like bottom of A.
Hmm.
And then once you get to like Master Plus, he's probably unplayable. But I would say generally speaking, that he does a lot. His wave clear is really solid.
Hmm.
He's hard to kill. He builds anti heal in his core build. Um, yeah, I think the champion's really solid. I think he's the easiest top laner to play. Um,
Yeah,
there's less variance in his runes and build than probably most champions. So I think if you're looking for like I'm gonna play this champion and I can watch a 5-minute guide and understand, like that's Garen.
Yeah, and I think him being easy does bump him up to A because it, the more easy a champion is to play, where like anyone can pick them up and play like 10 games and understand them. I think that should like raise them up on the list. So I think that makes sense him being an A because he's
Yep.
he's
And
not
there
difficult.
well, and there's even simple stuff like Eing using your Q for movement speed in your E, waiting for them to get like um the penetration or like the damage reduction, or it's I want to say it's either like penetration or armor reduction, but waiting for that to kick in and then you Q ult and like that kills most people. So it's very like his combos are very, very simple. So yeah, I would say top of 8 just because of ease of execution. Assuming you're not like Master Plus, then I just would never play this champion ever, and I would put him below D tier. So
Mhm. Okay. So Gnar, I don't see a lot of Gnars. Um, whenever I do see them, like a decent Gnar, not even like a super good one, just a decent Gnar who can like land an ultimate every once in a while, I feel like just makes him a solid champion. Like I don't think he's bad, and him being partly ranged makes it easier for him to play into certain champions that like other things that play similarly may be harder to play. So I kind of feel like he's somewhere in the A.
I man, where I put the champion, I th- so Nar's biggest benefit is Mega Form.
Hmm.
It is so impossible to communicate with your teammates about playing around your mega so that you can actually play the game the way like a good Nar wants to. I think in competitive, this champion is like probably close to like S, if not top of A.
Hmm.
I think in solo queue, this champion is probably like top of B.
Hmm.
I think this champion is a pretty average champion, only because you can't communicate with your teammates on you going mega and you needing to like play the game. I do think he has really good laning. I do think he has really good scaling. I just think in general, outside of Megaform, Gnar is useless in mid to late game.
Hmm.
And if your team isn't playing around it, which in solo queue they never are, then I think he's gonna lose some games he could win if communication was like in the game.
Yeah, if he could be like, okay, I'm about to jump on them, I'm going in,
Yep.
because it's a
Yep.
lot harder if somebody has to react to what you're doing than if they
Yeah.
know it's gonna happen. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
like I'd rather have him than Cassiopeia and stuff. So I think top of B makes sense.
Yeah.
I think he's solid though. So top of B,
Yep.
bottom of A, I'm pretty happy with around that area.
I think he is a champion that has higher highs than champions like Cho'gath.
Hmm.
um, because I think there's a lot more mastery involved with Nara's lane phase and like maintaining leads and the funny tricks that people will do to like maintain rage correctly. There are some really good Nar players manage their rage so perfectly that you don't need to communicate with your team. But I would say for most players, like that's probably not something that they're doing very well.
Hmm.
So yeah, I would say top of B.
Yep. Okay, so Gwen. My opinion of Gwen is that she's broken. I think that she's just, if it gets to late game, she does tons of damage, like crazy damage out of nowhere that you don't expect, especially if she has like a Rift Maker and a Rylai's or something, and you can't get away from her. And then I think sort of like the Xin Zhao ult, her ability where people can't hit her outside of her circle makes it to where even if she's not tanky, she can like be a pseudo tank because she's not taking the damage that she should be taking. So she can play more aggressively than other champions that have similar stat lines. So I think that she's kind of broken because she's not super super hard either.
I I think she's maybe man, this is tough. So I think the problem with Gwen is that she destroys the meta right now. Everything that is every S tier champion that I would or every champion I would put in S tier except for one, she destroys all of those matchups. I think
Mhm.
she destroys all of like the commonly picked champions right now.
Mhm.
Except for the one I'm thinking of, which is Jax. I know she loses to Jax, and I think that's the one meta champion right now that she loses to, and I think she beats like everything else.
Mhm.
So I would say she's S tier right now. I think if the meta shifts, she could fall to B very, very fast.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think she just destroys the meta so hard right now, and obviously she's a champion you invest more into, you'll get more out of her. But yeah, I would put her in S. I wouldn't say that you play her out of nowhere, but I think 1 to 2 games and you kind of get her play pattern enough that you'll at least understand what you're doing. She is a little reliant on first item, but solo queue games go on so long, like you'll get to your first item, you'll probably get to your second every game. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think she's kind of broken. That could change super fast, but as of right now, I do kind of agree with S tier.
Yeah, she's got like a little bit of nuance, but she's not super difficult. So it's like anyone who like puts in some games can basically understand how she plays. And she
Yep.
just, dude, she just does so much damage if she like gets to the point that she has items.
Yep. I've seen her on 2 items go from like what felt like negligible damage to hitting her 2 item spike, hitting like level 16, like probably down 4k gold off of an Ornn, and then just one shot the Ornn that
Hmm.
was up like 4k gold.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a situation where Gwen scales super hard, and I don't think that she is as hard to master as people think that she is, but I do think she improves as you master her.
Mhm. Okay. So Alawi. So my opinions of Alawi, I think that Alawi is super easy to play. My only like thing I dislike about her is that she doesn't have any CC or anything like that. But I think she's easy to play, brings tons of damage, can split push, wants to 1v2, wants to 1v3. I think that she doesn't bring any utility other than split pushing. So that makes me want to put her like I'd rather have an Alawi than a Gnar, but I'd rather have a cho'gath than an Alawi. So like bottom A, top of B is what I'm feeling.
I would say top of B. I think that Alawi is a champion kind of like Melio, for example, where Melio was really broken, like extremely broken in certain matchups and just good in others. I think Alawi's good matchups are really, really frustrating to play for enemy teams. And into specific team comps, I think there's absolutely nothing that they can do. Like I think there's very little counterplay. I do think there are some matchups that are unplayable for Alawi. She never gets off the ground, and she's basically like a 0-5, like Darius or Fiora walking around and is useless.
Hmm.
So yeah, I would say top of B. I would say probably the top of B is the ease of execution. She is just very simple to play.
Hmm.
Um, and because of that, yeah, I think top of B is a good spot.
And if you luck into an enemy team that has no CC and she can just like spam her abilities in the middle of the team, then it's just one of the easiest champions in the game to play. I think
Yep.
you just stand there and hit one ability over and over again.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the champion is definitely not always a choice, but in the spots that she's good, she's disgusting.
Right. So in a sort of a meme but not a meme way, I actually kind of think Aurelia's broken. I think that she's even whenever she's in a bad spot, I still feel like Aurelia is always good.
I'm gonna say I don't think she's S tier right now
Hmm.
against meta. I think she's S tier against everything that's not meta.
Hmm.
Like if I put her against the S tier champions in the game, I don't think she does super well. Um, if I put her against some of the A tiers, I think then she can struggle. I would say she's definitely A.
Hmm.
Um, I would definitely rather have her than a lot of other champions. There's the meme, obviously, like Vamp Scepter's full build.
Hmm.
This champion is really hard and frustrating to play against. I just do think that her unplayable matchups are like what I would put as a lot of the S tiers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I definitely think always reliable. I think she's broken against everything that's not like I would probably put her below Camille.
Hmm. Yeah, I'd rather
Um,
have an Aurelia than like Aatrox or Garen. I think for sure.
yeah, yeah. I mean, Cho'gath is. I mean,
I
I'm
kind of
kind of
want to put
wondering if
Cho
Cho'gath.
above Garen.
Yeah, I would too. I'm actually thinking that exact same thought. I
Okay.
think I'd put Cho up there too. I think Aatrox and Garen are good champions. I think Aatrox is harder to play than Garen, which is why I'd put it in that order. And I
Hmm.
also just think if people are doing the EW Max Cho'gath, I think it's gross. And very hard to play against. I do just think if you're talking about putting 4 to 5 champions in your champ pool, and Aurelia is one of them, I think you'll be in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, I think so too.
Just don't play it against the S tier tanks, and I think you're okay. I think the S tier tanks demolish Aurelia and give her such a hard time.
Hmm. Okay, so Jax. I sort of feel the same way about Jax as I do Aurelia. I think that even whenever Jax is like bad, I still think he's a pretty good champion just because he's easy to play, brings CC. If he gets to a point he's full build, he can like carry a game completely. He's a really strong split pusher who can just mollywop towers and like 5 autos. Um, I think that he's like a even when he's bad, I don't think he falls out of like B. Even whenever it's like a bad meta or bad room change or something for him, I think at the very lowest he's B. But I think he's
I
closer to like A.
I definitely think he's A right now. I think he has the same problem with Aurelia. I think that there are some S tier champions that are just awful bad matchups for him. I think anywhere above Garen, I think is acceptable. It's he is basically the same thing as Aurelia. There's a world where I think the higher you go in MMR, um, the higher Aurelia goes, and
Hmm.
the slightly lower I put Jax
Hmm.
for solo queue. And I only think that because Jax's stun is, I think, just super easy to land and very consistent. And I've just seen in low MMRs, people just whiff Aurelia combo a lot.
Hmm.
Um, so I would say you probably switch their positions in low MMR, but I think for average MMR, that's probably about right.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think either of those champions kind of have the same problem, but you put a lot of time into either of them. I think they're both really strong.
Hmm. So we have Jace. So Jace is another one of mine, might be like a controversial one. I think that he's a don't pick unless you're at one trick, just for the simple fact that he's not super difficult to play, but just because of how his kit is with the like having 3 extra abilities, he is a little more difficult than other champions. Um, and like knowing when to use each ability changes like knowing how to play him and not knowing how to play him changes drastically how strong the champion is. So I wouldn't want to put him above C at all. I think at the highest I'd want to put him C, and I think for me he fits in D better. I think that in the hands of like Faker, he's an S tier. He's just incredible. But I think for the average League of Legends player, I think it's a don't play it unless you're a one trick.
Yeah, and honestly, I think he might be an FF at 20. I think for average MMRs, I think he's FF at 20. I
Hmm.
think for Plat Plus, he's probably don't play unless you're a one trick.
Okay.
I think for gold, he's just don't play him. I think if you're wanting to invest a lot of time into a champion,
There's
just
so
go
many
play
better
Aurelia or
champions.
Jax or Camille or one of the A tier champions,
Yeah.
and you will win way more games. I think if you're a one trick and you're like Plat Plus, I think you can probably get away with it. But unless you really love playing Jace, I just think don't play Jace.
Hmm.
Fiora at least is like so Fiora's baseline value is at least there's the true damage on her R to destroy and murder tanks. With Jace, there's just literally nothing. It's like he is damage and legitimately nothing else.
Hmm.
There's no there's not enough in his kit to make me think that he's worthwhile. And I've seen diamond players struggle to play this champion to even moderate success.
Hmm.
So yeah, I just think he's if he's on my team, as like a jungler, I'm either camping him and praying or just ignoring his lane, watching him int and hoping we can carry him through the game.
Yeah.
A good Jace feels good, but I just don't think most players are ever going to get there.
Yeah, 100%. And he's not popular enough. So I would want to compare him to like Aphelios. I think Aphelios is harder to play, but I think that an average Aphelios is better than an average Jace because Aphelios is more popular, so more people have played him. Where Jace isn't hardly popular at all. I think that most people just have no idea when you're supposed to do anything on him. So he's just a like there's no reason to play him unless you just absolutely know that you 90% win this matchup and you've played it a bunch of times. But if it's not that one scenario that happens once every 100 games, then I just feel like you don't play him at all.
Yeah, I think Plat Plus, definitely more of a one trickable champion. Below that, it's probably just a don't play. There's just better investments, unless you just love his play style and you're willing to like lose games for that, then I just think yeah, I wouldn't do it personally for me. I don't think so.
Okay, so as far as Kel goes, I think that she's kind of an FF at 20 as well. I don't like most champions that their whole shtick is like make it to 35 minutes and you win. Because I think that in like low gold, for example, I think the easiest way to win games is to come out of lane like 5 kills up on your counterpart, and Kel just doesn't do that unless people are inting into you. So I think that she, even if you're like good at her, I just think that she's like not a great way to try to pull wins out if you're not like playing with people who can make it through the game without losing in 20 minutes.
I I actually think she's like B tier. I think she might be higher than B tier. I only say this because I think so it's hard because I think most people that play Kale main Kale.
Hmm.
Um but or at least play her a lot, even if they don't like OTP her. I think she's played a lot. I think that this champion can solo kill a lot of top laners at level 1 despite being a scaling champion,
Hmm.
which is really weird to say. Um I think that there are better options than Kale. In solo queue, I think she's probably B. In competitive, I think she's FF at 20. I think
Okay.
this is an absolutely, if you're talking competitive, I think she is an unplayable champion. If you're talking about, because you can dive her, beat the crap out of her, snowball your top laner, the game's over.
Hmm.
Um, because of the nature of solo queue, I would say she's B. I think she doesn't lose a lot of matchups that she should lose because of the changes to give her range at like level 6,
Hmm.
which is I believe, yeah, I believe it's level 6 now. Um Once that happened, I think that she became a lot more viable. I do think her win rate is also fairly high when people build the right build. I think if anyone's going AD, I'm pretty sure AD is like super troll now though.
Yeah, I think
But
most people
definitely,
go AP slash
yeah,
attack speed.
yeah, I think she's probably B tier for the nature of solo queue. But if I saw her in a competitive game on my team, I would probably be flaming my top laner.
Hmm. So I don't think that I can put her in B. I'm okay with not putting her F. I would be okay with saying like I'd rather have her on my team than Akshan. I
Yeah,
think
I think
that's
top of
a
C is fine.
okay. Top of C,
I
we can
think
do that.
it's definitely hard to say because of I think the nature of her being one tricked. Because I
Hmm.
feel like if I'm talking about I'm playing 5 to 10 games of Kale, how good is she? I'm
Hmm.
just not very confident on how good she is 5 to 10 games in. But I do think once you get to like the 15 to 20 games in, I think that she can. I think she can take over games before 16. When people
Hmm.
talk about like the Cassidin versus Kale, like get to 16 and win, I think Kale can win games at like level like 13, 14,
Hmm.
even before she's got like mega fed. But I do think she is a champion that will take more games than your average top laner to get good at. Like I would put her more on like the Gangplank level of like you're gonna probably want to commit yourself to Kale a little bit more than you would need to a lot of the A tier champions to perform well. Um, yeah, I definitely think she's an FF at 20 in comp though.
Hmm.
That champion is just there's a reason why we don't see her in pro.
Yeah. So okay, put her at the top of C. So Kennen. Kennen, I don't have super strong opinions on, but I don't think he's a bad champion at all. I think he fits somewhere between like C and A. I'm pretty okay with putting him anywhere in between there. I think that being ranged is just always going to be an advantage, especially in lower elos, just because people aren't used to playing into ranged. I think that if you get like a good flanking Kennen ult, you just completely like one shot the enemy team as far as like the team fight goes. Not necessarily damage wise, but like if you catch 3 or 4 people in an ultimate and they're all stunned, it's really hard to lose a team fight unless you're just really behind. So I think that he's like if you don't know how to play him, he's probably like kind of troll. But if you're someone who has like 20, 30 games on him, I think he's a pretty solid champion into most other champions. He's not too hard to play. So I'm pretty okay with anywhere between like A to C for Kennen.
I think bottom of B. I think I'd rather have weirdly enough, I'd probably rather have a Darius than him because I think Kennen doesn't lose lane. I don't see a lot of Kennens like coming out of lane with 2 or 3 kills.
Hmm.
I just see them go like 0-0-0 and are up 20 farm.
Hmm.
I do think Kennen's biggest problem is his lack of damage. His flanks are insane and they win team fights a lot. Setting those up in solo queue is a little harder. I think I do agree with you. he definitely does become probably, if you're talking about like the 20 to 25 games
Hmm.
marker, I probably put him bottom of A. But
Hmm.
I think for your average person who probably only plays like 150 games of League a year, he's probably like bottom of B.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, a solid champion mostly due to his range status, but I don't think he wins hard enough in most matchups.
If they suddenly made him a melee champion and kept his entire kit the same, besides that, I think that he's like a D. So I think
Yeah,
that
he's
just the
yeah, agreed. He's a D or an F with the same kit. I agree.
yeah. Okay. So Kled. Dude, I actually have a like Kled is one of my favorite champions. I think that Kled is broken. I think that not enough people play him. I think that every ability in his kit is good. I think that you can do some really fun things with the whole Scarl passive. I think Kled's broken. That's my hot take on Kled.
So I kind of hate Kled because Kled makes me want to do something I don't want to do. I'm not gonna say S tier. I'm gonna say top of A.
Mhm.
This champion is only one tricked, okay? This is one of the only champions in the game that I think is like only one tricked. It's like old Aurelian Soul with this champion.
Okay,
I feel like
so
the only people I know that play Kled are Kled like OTPs, but
the
I think Kled OTPs are scary.
so the guy who I duoed with to go from silver 4 to gold 4. So we didn't duo every single game, but we played like 15 games together. Of those 15 games, 13 of them were Kled. So, so he was like a Kled one trick. But
Yeah.
I just think Kled is such a good champion. I think he does everything. His ultimate's good. His bear trap on a rope is good. His being able to follow people is good.
Yeah,
Feeling
I
like you're
I
about
think
to go ahead.
think he might be bottom of S, to be honest. I actually think he goes even against the other like OP champions in the game,
Hmm.
like the other S tiers. Um, I just think the one caveat is I think he is only one tricked.
Hmm.
So if you're gonna play Kled, one trick him, or I wouldn't probably worry about it. But I do think that champion in the hands of like a decent player just doesn't lose almost any matchups. I think he only has two losing matchups. I
Hmm.
think one of them's like Singed. I don't remember the other one off the top of my head.
Some
But
obscure something that people
yeah,
don't really play.
they're not normal top laners. He goes even against like what I would consider probably the two best top laners in the game right now. And yeah, I think that champion definitely inflated by the fact that this champion is only played by one tricks.
Hmm.
I think he's probably like top of B on a
That
someone that's not going to one trick him.
on the average player.
Yeah, but I think because this champion is only played by one tricks, this champion is just broken. This
Yeah.
champion is just kind of OP.
If you know the matchups and stuff, like Kled is just such a good champion.
Yep.
Okay, so Cassante. So I know what Cassante does, and I've played against him and played with him, but it's been like less than 20 games. So I don't have a super strong opinion of him yet. I've seen him like do some crazy things, and then I've also seen him be completely useless. Um, so I don't even know like how I feel about Cassante yet.
I think he's D or F. Um, so I played against Cassante maybe only two or three times top lane,
Hmm.
but I know this champion one still has an abysmal win rate despite how long he's been out and people have had time to master him. I think that this champion struggles in so many matchups. I think he loses to like so many champions. Um, like give any champion a lead and they should be able to do something. But I feel like if I were to give a champion like a 3-0 start, I'd rather have a Fiora, I'd rather have an Akali, I'd rather have any champion in A or B tier.
Hmm.
I don't think I'd rather have the Cassante. I think maybe there's some magical matchups out there where this champion is just not movable.
Hmm.
But for the most part, I think this champion loses to like every matchup that is worth winning. And I don't know, maybe give it another year if people really like figuring out maybe proper builds or some other wonky things and he'll be better.
Hmm.
But this champion is so close to an FF at 20 for me because I just think for the top laners designed to be top lane, I think he's one of the worst out there.
Hmm. So the one footnote that I want to add though is I think he's an interesting champion. Like I don't know what he needs to like become a better champion, but he's like he's not a champion where like they put him into the game and I just think he's bad. Like old Aurelion Soul. I think old
Yeah,
Aurelion Soul was just like people could play him well and stuff, but it just felt like bad design. So I don't think he feels like bad design. I just in the games where he doesn't do anything, I'd rather have like anything else that's in D. I'd rather have a 0-3 Akali than a 0-3 Cassante.
yeah, I agree. He needs something. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's durability or damage, but
Mhm,
um, I don't think he's unplayable, which is the only reason I keep him out of FF at 20. But I think he's not beating any of the champions I see above him consistently.
mhm,
Yeah, it's just unfortunate. He's just in need of buffs.
mhm. All right. So a Malphite, the literal solid choice. I think he's A tier. I think Malphite's an easy to play good champion.
I think Malphite might be the second best top laner in the game
Dude,
after his buff.
I'm pretty okay with putting him at the bottom of S.
I think
I
he's at least, I think, in my mind, bottom of S. I think this champion. Have you played against new Malphite with
mhm,
his like W buff?
mhm.
This champion can build full tank and not lose any. So I think he's the best champion in the game, assuming that you're not. I think Malphite used to not be blind pickable. I think he's a lot more blind pickable now than he's ever been, which is the main reason I feel comfortable putting him in S. However, caveat is I think he does have a few matchups that are meta that are unplayable. I think the like Ornn, Maokai, Silas matchups are the ones that at least come to my mind are absolutely unplayable.
Mhm.
But realistically, if you aren't trying to blind Malphite every game, I think Malphite wins so many matchups. I think if they have an AD top jungle, he is unkillable 0-0-0 lane phase or like 3-0-0 lane phase. Um yeah, I think this champion is at probably just broken.
Mhm.
I wouldn't pick him outside of like AD top jungle, but if you keep it to where you're like only picking him in that situation,
Or if
I think
like
that
your mid
champion has
laner
no
is
balls.
hard forcing Yasuo or something. Something like
Yeah,
that.
mid laners. Yeah, exactly, exactly. I just think realistically, he's got a few bad unplayable matchups. Just don't pick him in those matchups. I don't
Mhm,
think that for that very reason, I would say he is not blind pickable, but I think he is the best like counter pick in the game. In terms of like a value engine, I think he's great in comp for anything probably below diamond, maybe even above diamond. But I'm going to say at least plat and below. He's OP. He's disgusting.
mhm.
Uh, Probably don't blind pick him. If you do, at least ban the Silas because I think that's the most known counter.
Yeah.
But yeah, this does not lose lane.
And
Um,
honestly, his main job, like once he gets out of lane, is just pressing R on a carry, and that's not hard to do, and it can't be stopped if you're in range of it. Like
yep.
if their flash isn't up, they're just gonna get smacked, and that's just gonna
He
happen.
he definitely does have bad matchups, but I think he's one of those champions you shouldn't be blinding anyway. So as long as you're not trying to blind him, I think he's S. If someone were to say, well, if I want to play him every game, where is he? He's probably bottom of A or like
Yeah.
right above Garen or
Hmm.
something like that. But by nature, I'm going to assume if you're playing Malphite, you're not just blind picking him every game. If you are, stop doing that.
Hmm.
Um, or start banning Silas.
And he's one that because of what his ultimate is, even if he's 0-5, he can still like do his job. He's a
Yep.
he doesn't just like get erased from the game. He can go from 0-5 to 0-10, but if you kill the enemy Vayne every single team fight, like and then die, then you've done the Malphite.
Yep. I agree.
Okay, so Maokai. So I know that at the beginning of the season everybody was super like hot for Maokai. I don't think Maokai's that good of a champion. I think he's like I don't think he's bad. I think he's like a B is like the highest I would want to put him.
So Maokai is another one of those problems where I think it's the Colette effect. I think this champion is not played often. I think this
Hmm.
champion in general has a fairly low play rate as far as the numbers that I remember. I do remember him having like a disgustingly high win rate. I think he was like the fifth or sixth best top laner plat plus in win rate. But he is a champion. He is a champion like Garen, where I feel like this champion just is easy to play. But I think he's also like cho'gath in the fact that not only is he easy to play, but he provides a lot of value.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably slot him. I would. He might be S in my mind, but I think top of A is probably more correct because if your team does like you're not dealing the damage for your team, so you're kind of praying to like the good lord to help
Mm-hmm.
you deal damage. So I would put him somewhere middle of A.
Yeah, so I'm a like I think I'd just rather have a Cho than him, but I think I'm
Yeah,
fine putting him above everybody else that's behind Cho.
yeah, I agree. I think if you're a tank player, like you're a solid tank player, there are better tanks.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that by himself, I think he's a disgusting champion. I think in the hands of your average player, they're going to really struggle in lane phase, which
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where his biggest struggle is. I don't feel like he does a lot of damage. If your jungler doesn't like camp you to like get the free kills, then you're kind of useless compared to like some other things during lane phase. But his CC and team fights, you just don't let people move. So yeah, I think very valuable. I just think he has probably a slightly worse lane phase than cho'gath.
Yeah, he's he can't farm as easily as Cho is the thing. Like there are times that like if the other person knows the matchup very well, then you can just you never get to the point that you get tanky because you just don't have enough gold. And like you said, in those scenarios, you need like your jungler's help and things like that to like mitigate it. So like of the two, I'd rather have Cho just because I think that right now Cho just feels extremely strong. So but I don't think he's bad. I think that he's still a solid champion.
Yeah.
Okay, so top lane Mordekaiser. So of the roles a Mordekaiser can be played, I actually think top is his best role. I would put him like bottom of S, honestly. I think that Mordekaiser can just straight up take over games if it's like a good Mordekaiser.
Yeah, I think man, I'm trying to think of what does he lose to that matters. I don't think that he loses to anything relevant. I would say he's probably also up there. Unless you're playing against I think like Kled is probably one of his like more like rough matchups.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think like even the top laners that should do well against him, like the GP and the Gwen and the like Jackson stuff. I think that Mordekaiser can still potentially win those with a decent lead. I think Mordekaiser is one of those champions that can his ultimate is the only difference. I think if his ultimate wasn't as like OP as it is, he'd be like probably toward the bottom of A.
Mm-hmm.
But the ability to just say, "Hey, you have a Yumi, and now I'm just taking your AD carry and wrecking them, and Yumi is now useless,"
Mm-hmm.
or just the way he nullifies so many different ways to play the game. If you can get down his laning phase, I think he can definitely take over games.
And
I used to
then
play him in the jungle a lot, and you get him to 2 or 3 items, and he just 1v9s the entire game, and no one can do anything.
so even in the scenario that like carries start buying like QSS and things to counteract you, it's like yeah, it sucks if you ult someone and then you get QSS'd, but it's like if you're forcing multiple people on the enemy team to dump 1,300 gold into you, then like you're still doing something.
Yep. And I think realistically in solo queue, there's always in
Dude,
solo queue there's
I
almost
hate
always
building
someone ult.
QSS. I hate it. I
Yeah.
hate any time I have to build that item. So I'm that guy
I
that'll get Mordekaiser ulted 3 times and still not have a QSS because it feels so
uh,
bad to have to dump that money.
I'll buy it. I'm probably one of the people that will if I'm like playing a carry or something, I'll buy it. Especially if I'm on AD carry or something, I'll just do what I have to do. I do think in multiple AP comps, he's really bad though. I think that's probably his one weakness. In the same way where I think Malphite is really bad in like against AP champions,
Mhm.
I think Mordekaiser is really bad with a lot of AP champions because forcing people to spend money on MR in a team that has like AP mid jungle
Mhm.
is just really valuable. You're just like forcing people to build durability and take less damage from your team. That's like my only caveat for Mordekaiser. I think he's really strong. Just like be careful picking him when you don't know what your team is going to play, because then they'll just pick like 3 AP champions. You'll go like Lux support, Diana jungle, and some AP mid laner, and now you're like incentivizing people to build durability. I think
Mhm.
that's like the one be careful of. Because I do think that Mordekaiser is strong, but I think he is strongest as like a singular AP threat.
Mhm.
I think that is what he wants. He wants to be the only AP champion, so that building MR is a waste of your gold.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that he's like I would feel bad at putting him anywhere below top of A. I think that he's just in his current state. I just think he's such a good champion.
I agree. I think he's very hard to take down. His lane phase can be really consistent. And honestly, his ultimate by itself, the worst, like if you get really far behind, just ult one person on their team that's really high value or deals a lot of damage. And even if you're squishy, just buy a stopwatch and Zonias, And it's like just keep their like high damage threat out of the team fight, even if you can't kill them, and that'll win you plenty of team fights, even if you're behind.
Okay, so Nasus. I actually think Nasus is F tier. I am a. I think that I'd rather if my top laner is going to be somebody who scales to try to win the game, I'd rather have Kel. Give me the Kel. Leave the Nasus alone. I think that Nasus can carry a game if people just don't CC him and like leave him alone. But it's like if the enemy team has any kind of CC or any kind of tank shred, Nasus is just too easy to kite. Like he can wither one person, but if that one person is not alone, he just gets CC'd and dies and does nothing.
I'm gonna I'm gonna agree with you. I think his power level is closer to like probably bottom of B, top of C.
Hmm.
But I just think there are so many champions that do what he does so much better
Hmm.
that it's like just don't. So I think it's less where his power level is and more like, yeah, if you're playing Nasus to try and win the game to scale in a side lane, you're really not picking the right champion.
Hmm.
I think this guy shit stomps like Silver MMR though. I think this champion in Silver and below, I think this champion like people don't space properly, wither, and they're dead. I do think Plat Plus, this champion is less good and just play other better split pushers.
Hmm.
Um, but I will at least give him the credit in lower MMRs. I do think Nasus just like shits on the
If people are
competition.
just like walking into your wither range by themselves, then yeah, Nasus will obliterate people. But
Yeah.
that's the you just have to not walk into him. That's just stay away from him unless you have people with you.
No, I completely agree. I think uh I think we're definitely at a point with a lot of those champions that there's just definitely better options. I
Hmm.
think this champion is just really bad at higher MMRs. The farther you climb, the worse he is, and that'll just keep continuing. If you want to learn a split push champion that can carry a game, just pick like I mean, you could even pick Garen, and I think Garen would be just way better than Nasus. I think Darius would be way more valuable than Nasus in a lot of situations.
Hmm.
There is a world like there's some like magic rainbow and butterfly moments where Nasus just 1v9s, but I think that's more of a symptom of other people playing poorly and less a symptom of like a Nasus playing well.
Hmm. Okay, so I'm going to say the take of I think Olaf does what Nasus wants to do but better, just strictly because of the ultimate. I think that they sort of play like the same type of champion where it's like they want to hit a certain power spike and then take over the game. The difference is all of the bad that I said about Nasus about like if there's somebody there to pill, then Nasus can't do anything. He just stands there. Olaf presses R and then he just kills whoever he caught. Like he has almost all of the strengths of Nasus. He has a slow, he has high damage, he gets pseudo tanky, he has almost all the strengths of Nasus without the weakness of being easily pillable. So I think that he's like B. I think he's like better than some other options. And I think into the right team comp, into like if the enemy team plays like 5 CC champions, I think he goes from like a bottom of B to top of A because there's just not another champion really that you can do what he can do into those team comps.
So I actually think So it's really hard. I don't feel like I don't see Olaf very top very often.
Hmm.
I don't feel like my personal experience against Olaf top has been that this champion is OP.
Hmm.
However, I think that every person I know thinks Olaf top is S tier. Like
Uh-huh.
every person I know.
Hmm.
So it's really hard because I'm thinking of like my Diamond 2 friend that literally thinks Olaf top is like S tier.
Hmm.
And I'm thinking I don't see Olaf very often. So this is the hard part. I think he's minimum A tier
Hmm.
because if I'm looking at Olaf versus any of the B tier champions, I'm like, okay, the difference between I think Olaf and Nasus is Olaf wins lane. Olaf runs people down in lane phase and
Hmm.
solo kills them with no jungler assistance at all. I think put him against like he wins against Malphite, he wins against Mordekaiser, he wins against Maokai, he wins against like he wins a lot of these good matchups.
Hmm.
Um, I think he might be S in the current meta, but I think he's a play style that no other champion in the game has. You're running people over in lane phase to win the game, and if you can't be lane dominant, he is the wrong champion for you.
Hmm.
Which is why I would probably put him bottom of A, because I think he's a play style champion. I think he's OP, but only in the hands of someone that's ready to say like, I'm gonna run you down and kill you at level 4.
I think he's
Um,
literally like a better version of like Nasus, Fiora. He's like he wants to do the same stuff. Like he wants to be the big hard carry from the top lane. And I think his playstyle is just easier. Like
yeah.
he's not as hard to do it.
He just can consistently win lane, which is I think the struggle of all the other champions that try to do what he does.
Hmm.
Yeah, I definitely think in the hands of a committed player, he's probably S tier in the current meta.
Hmm.
Um, I think there are bad matchups for Olaf. I think a lot of those bad matchups are not very commonly played though. I think they're normally into like OTP kind of situations.
Hmm.
Like I know Kled is a really bad matchup for him, but like Kled is Kled is a one trick champion. You don't see that very often.
Yeah.
I think like Camille and Jax are probably his two like bad matchups in like the A tier S tier. Yeah, this champion, if once you get used to his playstyle, I think he's very good. I think the average player plays Olaf top and doesn't try to just go for lethal all the time, and
Hmm.
that ruins a lot of his ability to like play the game and win the game. Because I've just seen level 4. It's like level 4 Olaf like gets shoved under his tower and then just hits a ghost and throws Qs at the enemy. They
Hmm.
burn flash. He keeps throwing Qs and then kills them before they get to their tower.
Hmm.
So definitely a champion that can carry games. But yeah, I definitely think there's something about this champion in the top lane I probably don't understand as well. Because I will say that is a champion I consistently hear people talking about as being like one of the premier top laners in the game,
Hmm.
despite the fact that all he does is run people down.
Yeah. And he's just like I said, if do nothing feels worse than to be like, okay, we're gonna play the CC heavy, we're gonna play Sejuani, we're gonna play Ash, we're gonna play Braum, and then you get to that last pick and they leave their top lane as the last pick, and it's Olaf. And then it's like, all right, what do we do now, guys? What do we do to
Yep.
deal with this Olaf that just negates everything that we just picked? And I think in those situations, Olaf just becomes from like a good champion to like, all right, this is the only champion you could have picked here that can do what Olaf is about to do.
Yep. He is very unique in that way.
Right. So Orn, I feel like you're going to agree with me on this. I think Orn's S tier. I think
I
he's
think Ornn
just
is I think Ornn is number one. I
number
think
one.
Ornn is the best. I think Ornn is not only S tier. I think Ornn is the best champion in the game,
Hmm.
probably. Like not only the best. He might. Yeah, I don't even know if he's the best top laner. I think he might just be the best
The best
champion in the
champion.
entire game. In the game, Ornn was a champion where, if you think about the other champions that want to do what he does, right? He is a scaling champion. He gets his levels. He gives value to his teammates. He's not supposed to win lane. He's not supposed to have like his value is get to late game, give people better items, and every level, as far as what the math used to be, I know they changed a lot of it, so it might not be the same. It's every level from like 14 to 17 He gives 1k value to a teammate, and at level 13, he gives 1k value to himself.
Mhm.
That is 5,000 gold value and like items, which obviously doesn't correlate to everything. But this champion wins lane.
Mhm.
Like this is a champion that is winning lane. This is a champion that is very hard to counteract because he builds raw tank, so he just itemizes against you. You can't kill him. He can kill you despite building literally no damage items. This champion is disgusting. I think his win rate is one of the best in the game as well to even match. He has the second highest win rate of all top laners, the top being Cassiopeia Plat Plus right now. Um, and so yeah, in terms of actual top laners, he has the highest win rate among all top laners.
Mhm.
He has so much build diversity. This champion is just stupid. I hate this champion more than any champion in the entire game right now. I wish they would nerf it to the ground. Until this champion gets nerfed into the literal ground, he is just the best champion probably in the game.
Mhm. Basically, since he came out, anytime I play on a team, it's like you get a top laner. Do you play Ornn? He doesn't play Ornn. Okay, we got to look for somebody else. It's a he's just he's such a good champion. Like, so I have a man crush on Kled. Ornn is a better champion than Kled. I love Kled as a champion. Ornn is just better. Ornn does everything. And like you said, there are like he's not supposed to win lanes and stuff. And then like Ornn will just randomly come out of lane with like 4 kills. He'll just whether it's because he's like stopping people CC with his ability, or he gets like a good ultimate, or somebody tries to dive him under tower and he gets a double kill randomly because he's Ornn. But he'll just hit whenever he comes out ahead, he can get his other people their ornaments earlier. He just it completely changes the game. Like if you take a bot lane that was even and suddenly your bot lane gets an ornament and theirs doesn't, your bot lane's ahead. You do the same thing for jungler. Your jungler's like can almost 1v1 the enemy jungler. He gets an ornament. Now he can 1v1 the enemy jungler. Like Ornn just completely changes the game whenever he starts to get like higher up in the levels. I think he's just an incredibly good champion.
Yep, he has. So I had this problem with supports a long time ago, where you had enchanters that had zero negative matchups. Like they just won every single like lane or won every game anyway on average. Ornn has no negative win rate matchups comparing him to other champions Plat Plus. His worst matchups, these are the one I use is Shen, because Shen does actually beat him in lane, but Shen doesn't outvalue his like level 14 to 17 giving value to other teammates at all. And then I know Olaf and Fiora are often considered like really good matchups as well. Um, the obvious issue is like Fiora needs to kill him early
Mm-hmm.
and snowball a lead, and Ornn can kill you in lane. So one of the best matchups against Ornn is like an actual coin flip. You're just coin flipping the entire game on if you can just like solo kill this guy on repeat and hope and pray. I think Shen is probably the best tank option, and then I think Olaf is a good option as well. But yeah, that's the main reason Olaf is good is because when Ornn tries to use crowd control, you say no,
Mm-hmm.
and then you just beat the crap out of him and hope and pray.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this champion is the most frustrating champion in the game. He wins so many matchups. I think that this champion should just be hotfixed and should have been hotfixed so long ago.
He's been good for basically since he's been put into the game. Like I feel like there's never been a time that he wasn't like a good champion.
Yeah, I agree. I think this champion's only the durability update just made this champion even better. This champion is unkillable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just I played against an Ornn who was very bad at Ornn. I like killed him several times in lane, but all he just sit back, farm, get levels, and it didn't matter. It didn't do a single thing. So
Right. Okay. So Ornn is just the unkillable demon king.
true.
So next one's Pantheon. So not necessarily for top lane, but just in general, I think that Pantheon is solid because he can be played in like all 5 positions. I think that he's just the current iteration of Pantheon is just a good champion. I don't really think he's like S tier because I think there's just a lot of stuff that's better than him. But I don't think that he's bad whatsoever. The lowest I would want to put him is like top of B, to be honest.
So ignoring his flexibility,
Hmm.
I think he's probably top of B. I definitely don't think he's S. This champion does not win a lot of matchups top lane right now.
Hmm.
Um, well, he wins the matchups, but I think it's a lot like Darius, where it's like win lane. Well, maybe you know what,
So
man.
hear me out.
Mid
So
lane, so mid lane, I think this champion is like S tier.
yeah, I agree.
I think I think top lane, I'd say he's above Olaf and bottom of A. Maybe above Aatrox as well.
I think I honestly would rather have him than Garen as well. Like if I'm looking at the champions, like I think that Jackson up I'd rather have, but I think I'd rather have Pantheon than Garen, Aatrox, and Olaf
Yeah,
in
I
most
think
games.
yeah, agreed. I'm okay with that. I do think the issue with Pantheon is it's a counterpick champion. This
Hmm.
is very kind of similar. Like Malphite is S tier, assuming you're just not like picking him into like the 5 unplayable matchups he has. I think Pantheon is kind of the same, where Pantheon is really good. There are just specific matchups that are not playable. There's like Mundo is not playable. Malphite, Maokai, Ornn. I know
Hmm.
Singed is pretty difficult. There are a lot of matchups where he just the matchups that he feels bad in feel pretty bad, especially like the Ornn to like Maokai matchups,
Hmm.
where you can't even like stun them. Yeah, it's really rough. But I do think he's probably gonna do more than every champion below him.
Hmm.
Um, yeah,
I
I
so
he's more solid than I think of him
mhm. I
initially.
I don't want to put him any higher for top lane, and my reasoning is so I think his ultimate right now is pretty incredible, but I think the same way as like Galio and TF and other ultimates like that, like the global ultimates, I think in mid lane they're more useful because you have more places you can go with it. I think in top lane the ultimates, it's still a good ultimate, but it's not as useful. So I don't want to put him like any higher than where he's at.
Yeah, I think that's about where he's at right now. I think he's pretty solid. I think he wins a lot of matchups right now. He's very simple and easy to play. He can even stop Karthus ultimate as long as he like aims in the direction of Karthus. There's really dumb things like that.
Hmm.
But I do think, yeah, counter pick only. I would not be one tricking that champion if I wanted to like maximize winning. But a solid champion overall for sure.
So Poppy. I think that Poppy is one that you sort of only play because the enemy team has a lot of people with dashes that she can disrupt. And that if you're not playing into that, she's not that good of a champion. Like the highest I would want to put her is like C. Like,
I think she's bottom of C. I
yeah.
think in the matchups she's good in, because you don't pick her, you don't one trick this champion.
No.
This is like the least one trickable champion in the game.
Hmm.
However, I do think in the situation she's good, she's phenomenal. But
Hmm.
I think outside of any of those situations, she's really, really bad. Only pick her into dash champions. Counterpick the Yasuo's. Counterpick the like Gwen Aatrox. I think some of these other
She's
things.
really good into Tristana ADC, to be honest. The
Yep,
amount of times I've played Trist and like went to jump on someone and Poppy is just like, nope. Just feels
yep,
so bad.
yep. So I think she counterpicks a lot of compositions. I think her ultimate is extremely valuable
Hmm.
as long as she has a matchup where, like in comp, I think she can be really, really good in like gold plat MMRs. But yeah, in general, you're counterpicking, if not your lane, you're counterpicking like champions in other lanes for like mid game team fights.
Yeah, something that you're
Outside
worried
of
about.
that, this champion is an FF outside of those like situations. I think
Hmm.
this champion is don't play, but that's why I'd kind of put C. I
Hmm.
think at minimum she has some value.
Yeah,
So
because
like
even if you're picking her and you're not playing into like the counter picks, you still can have the times where like the ultimate can steal a Baron or things that just other champions don't really have a way to do that. So I don't think that she's like awful. I just think that she's very niche.
yeah, I and to be fair, I think she's incredibly oppressive in her niche.
Hmm.
I just think outside of her niche, not as great. Like ulting the jungler away so that you can get like a steal on an objective is just the most unfun experience for the enemy team because there's just no
Yeah, it
counterplay.
is.
It's yeah. Like Pop, I used to play Poppy jungle for that reason. I would literally ult away the enemy jungler and then like flash over the wall and like steal an objective, and there's just no counterplay to
Mhm.
it. So yeah, definitely niche, good in the niche. But yeah, otherwise definitely not.
Okay. So we got Quinn. So I am a Mastery 7 Quinn. I don't know if you knew that about me, but I played it exclusively in the bot lane. I hate ADC top laners with a passion. My bias in me wants to throw it in the bottom of F. I never want to see it in my game on my team ever. I think that the champion wise is probably like C, kind of troll. But if it's in top lane, I just don't want it on my team.
I'm gonna say D tier. Um, Caveat: I think her counter pick matchups are unplayable for the enemy team.
Hmm.
Um, like I would say the difference between her and Poppy is that Poppy has inherent value, um, even when in a bad matchup, and Quinn has none. However, I think that the matchups that Quinn wins are absolutely disgusting
Hmm.
and completely one-sided. And I do think that, ironically, despite how low she is on the tier list, she destroys Malphite, she destroys Olaf, she destroys Maokai, she destroys Mordekaiser. She actually beats a lot of good champions,
Hmm.
but she loses to everything else.
So
Like it's definitely a weird situation for her, and I think if you cannot win lane very very hard, she is useless.
absolutely. And that's the so whenever people think of Quinn, right? So I haven't played her a lot in the last season or two, so this info is a little bit old. But whenever people think of Quinn, they think of like oppressive early game winning lane, like you just said. But at least up until 2 years ago, because that's when I got this info, so it may have changed now. But at least up until 2 years ago, her highest winning percentage based on the amount of time in game was games that go after 45 minutes. She went from like a 50% win rate to like a 65% win rate in games that go late. Because in games that go late, with her ultimate, if somebody is out of position, and somebody is out of position almost always in like silver gold games, if somebody important is out of position late game, she just completely one shots them before they have a chance to react. So she
Yeah,
is a like she's like good at minutes 1 to 20, and then she falls off. And then if you hit full build 45 minutes, she becomes incredible. So if
yeah,
you're in that mid section of the game, she's not that good if she's not ahead. But on the extremes, she can be a powerful champion.
yeah. I actually, I don't know why I said it backwards. Her bad matchups are a lot of the S tiers, but she beats everything else. Is what I meant to say. I actually think she crushes a lot of champions. But yeah, it is a this champion is it's kind of a clutch situation. This champion is only one tricked. But this champion has a lot less value than a lot of those other champions. I do think this champion is disgusting when you have a marginal lead over someone else.
Hmm.
I think if you don't have a lead, it's a lot of the Fiora Kali situation. I would probably put her in terms of ordering D tier. I would I would probably put a Kali. Maybe I would even put a Kali above Fiora, and I think I would put Quinn above Fiora. I think Fiora is so niche. Um, is almost where I would have them. Because I do think like Quinn's flanking potential is really, really solid.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's one of those champions good in the hands of a master.
Hmm.
Um, and honestly, a really solid Jax counter. It's actually my go-to Jax counter for top lane
if
because it's
if
just
you
not playable
know
for jungle.
how to stop and how to play against certain champions, so that's why I learned her for bot lane, right? Whenever I started playing her, I played her a lot from seasons like from like whenever she was implemented into the game until like season 9. I played a lot of her in certain matchups in bot lane. Because she's just sort of like Poppy, where if the enemy picks a Zac, if you have a fast reaction time, anytime Zac jumps on you, you just stop Zac. She's in the right scenarios and stuff, she's okay, but she's just there's just so many other better champions that you can play.
I agree.
So next, so I put Ringar on here, and while like I know that he's like pretty off meta, he has been played enough top lane that I felt like it was okay to put him on the list because he's one of those that like there are YouTubers and stuff that like play him as one tricks enough that like other people try to play him. Um, as far as I feel about it, I'm a like don't play unless you're a one trick. I think that it's like a very specific play style that's not like most other top laners. So I think outside of like being a one trick with it, it's just not really worth playing.
Yeah, I agree. I think this champion is gross for one tricks only. But yeah, I definitely just feel like this champion's gross only for those one tricks that, and you have to put so many hours into it too, to really get to that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely just
It's
don't pick unless you're
not
one trick.
it's not like a pick this and face roll. It's a, like you have to actually understand how the champion works and how the play style works to be able to play it.
Yep, and it I think gets in a little bit of an inflated win rate just because people don't realize how to play against it, like where to
Hmm.
stand in lane to really avoid it. I do think this champion is one where people experienced in the matchup tend to be able to handle the Rengar lane a lot easier.
Hmm. Or just anyone, even if like even without experience, even if you just have like a respect for the lane because you're like worried about the Ringar getting fed, that's all it really takes is just not playing stupidly. And then like a 0-0 Ringar with the same CS coming out of top lane isn't as like scary as a lot of other top laners would be.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So Renekton. So Renekton is one that sometimes I feel like he's OP as fuck, and then other times I feel like he's just not that useful. Um, I think that he's like a, I want to say he's like bottom of B. I don't think he's troll, but I don't think he's good.
Yep. I think he's a heavily matchup dependent champion. Some matchups it's very unplayable for the other team, and some matchups are really, really unplayable.
Hmm.
This champion had some very high highs a few years ago. It has been very mediocre since then. I do think that this champion does have some matchups where it is a pretty solid choice, but in general, this champion is just not solid.
Hmm.
This champion, yeah, he just really struggles right now. And with Prowler's Claw getting removed,
Hmm.
I really don't know what's going to happen with this champion. They are apparently going to compensate buff him, so maybe these compensation buffs will put him in a really good spot and he'll be strong again. But at least for like 13.9, I do not think that he is very good.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that he's. I don't think he's in a place where he's bad. I just don't think that he's necessarily good either. He's very mediocre. All right. So a Riven. I kind of feel the same way about Riven as I do Renekton. I think that Riven is probably better than Renekton because a good Riven in a lot of scenarios can like hard carry a game. Um, Especially if like they know the spacing on her Q and her dash and stuff better than people who don't play against her very much. Because there's been times where like I thought I was safe as a ranged champion, and then I got too close and she just one shot me. So I think that because a lot of that happens, because not enough people play Riven, I think that she's okay, like better than Renekton, but I don't think she doesn't do the things that like the good champions do in top lane. She doesn't bring any utility. She doesn't bring anything special. She's just like a has CC damage carry champion. So I think that she's like a B.
I'm trying to compare her to the other champions on the list
Mm-hmm.
for B tier. I think she's probably higher up in B. I only again a harder champion to gauge. I think her highs are high. I
Mm-hmm.
think good Riven players are disgustingly good at Riven.
Mm-hmm.
I think the average Riven player, it's probably about B tier though.
Yeah.
I do know there are definitely some Riven players out there that are good enough at Riven that they make it look like Riven has no bad matchups.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think in general, I'd definitely rather have like a Riven than like a Kennen or a Darius or something else.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think Riven does run away with the game very, very hard if she does get that lead.
Mm-hmm. I think that as far as like where she goes in B though, I think I'd rather have an Alawi or a Gnar in most games. I think that their like skill floor is higher than Riven's is. I think that like a bad Riven is pretty bad, whereas a bad Alawi is just like, oh, you missed your E. Like there's not much to mess up on a champion where your main thing is like auto attacking or like right click abilities. So I think that
Yep.
they're just easier to play than she is. So that's why I'd want to put them above her.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I think anywhere toward the upper end of B, I think is like pretty good. I would not compare her to a lot of the A tier champions, but again, like it is a mastery type champion. You get enough mastery on her, and she'll like be very very competitive with a lot of like the high A tier.
Mhm. Okay, so Rise is another one that's like is bordering on off meta. Like I've seen him in some games, but not very much at all. But in my eyes, I see him as almost a copy paste of what Cassiopeia top is. It's like if you're someone who normally plays like mages and you just got like top as your second role, or you got filled in the top, and you like don't play any of the actual top lane champions, then I think that he's an okay pick into like top laners because he's ranged, he has some CC. Um, I don't think that he's OP or anything in top lane, but I think that he's like a middle of B. I think he fits right around where Cassiopeia fits.
Yeah, he's a tough one for me. I don't know if I have too much of an opinion. I haven't seen it in a very long time.
Hmm.
I would say that sounds about right. I would not play him unless you're like an autofill top laner and you like plays Rise mid.
Hmm.
I don't think this is a champion worth putting a lot of time into. I would say he's probably around a B tier for like autofill top laners that play Rise.
Hmm.
I would say in general, if you have no Rise experience, I feel like he's an FF at 20 for me. If I had
I
no
agree. Actually,
yeah, if you have no Rise experience, I would rather have a cannon minion on my
so
team.
you're saying a don't pick unless you're a one trick
Probably,
almost.
yeah.
Okay.
Probably, yeah. I I think for the people that do play Rise is very flippy. There are some matchups that he actually is very, very viable. But yeah, unless you're gonna one trick him, I definitely do think he has quite a few decent matchups.
Hmm.
But I would never think of a top laner that would play Rise other than like an autofilled mid laner.
Yeah, unless it's like someone who's like, okay, now I'm telling you, I watched this YouTube video. Rise is supposed to be the counter matchup for this champion, and then it's like, okay, play it, I guess, if that's what my top laner is telling me.
Yeah,
But
but
other than those scenarios, if you're not like autofilled, then it's like unless you're 500k mastery on it, there's just so many other things you can play.
I agree.
All right, so Rumble. So I actually haven't seen Rumble top at all this season. I don't think I put him on here because that's like his OG role. Most of the Rumbles I've seen this season have all been from jungle, to be honest. But like I said, because his OG role was top, I went ahead and put him on here. I
I think bottom would be I maybe
Yeah.
even C. His ultimates can like solo win games though. That's why I'm thinking like I don't think he's very good right now,
Hmm.
but like one it's kind of like a worse version of Malphite in terms of like his ultimate can just solo win fights.
Hmm.
Um I do think he just really struggles in a full tank meta. Like put him against the A or S tier, I think he just gets solo killed over and over and over again.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'd say he's either troll or bottom of B at best.
So like trying to compare it to the champions we have in here, almost everything in B I think I'd rather have than a Rumble. And like I
Yeah,
think I'd rather have a Kel than a Rumble too, to be honest.
yeah. I
So
mean, I'd even personally rather have a Poppy. I just probably wouldn't rather have an Akshan.
yeah, maybe we move Papia there. Maybe we do that. Put
Yeah,
Papia after Kel.
yeah, yeah. I think Poppy has more value. Um, but yeah, I do think Rumble is a champion. It's just not his meta. When it is his meta, this champion is broken
Hmm.
beyond belief. But like he's in kind of like a D or A champion.
Hmm.
Um, like this champion is kind of troll right now. When he isn't though, this champion will run the game over. So it's not been a good like few years on him.
And we have Set as the next one. So I have a pretty strong opinion about Set. I think that Set is Kled light. I think as far as like how much I like the champion, not that they're the same champion, but as far as like I think that they're a good champion, I think that Set is almost at the Kled level for me. Um, I don't know if I would call him broken, but I think that I would rather have him than anyone that's listed in A tier though.
Personally, I think Set. I'm not sure what happened, but I think Set is a lot weaker now than it feels like he used to be. So I think Set's actual problem, in my opinion, is people won't get off the Blade of the Ruined King Rush.
Hmm.
I feel like if people would get off the Blade of the Ruined King Rush, I think this champion actually builds Gore Drinker or Stridebreaker really well as a first item, and then like build something like Titanic Hydra and he beats the crap out of people.
Okay, so what
Um,
you're saying is Set is a himbo champion, and the people that play him are himbos that can't think for themselves.
I agree, yeah. So I think I would put Set below Pantheon
Hmm.
when the way he's currently being played.
Okay.
I think optimal Set where they just stop building Blade every single game for no reason other than he auto attacks twice.
Hmm.
Um, I think optimal Set is probably a little higher, but maybe not even that. I don't know. I do think he is a champion that is very good. I just think that he does lose to quite a few of the champions above him. Like
Hmm.
I know he loses Jax, he loses to Malphite, he loses to Ornn, he loses to Camille. Um, but I do think that this champion can be a little gross.
So the
So
reason that I put so much value into him is just so I add value to a champion that may not be like the strength level may not quite be there, but if they do a lot, if they bring a lot in their kit, it bumps them up for me, and that's sort of why I'm so high on Set is because like while he's not like face roll strong, he he has a stun, he has a gap closer, he has an ultimate that if you get a good ultimate flank, you can completely win a team fight for your team. He does a lot of things, so that's why I'm so like high on him. I'm pretty okay with putting him like mid A, especially with like you said where everyone just rushes the same build no matter what's happening, no matter what's happening in the game. Doesn't matter if you're 0-5, you're going Blade of the Ruined King no matter what. I think in that scenario that we live in, I think that like middle of A is where I'd want him to be. I don't
yeah.
think I don't want to put him in B at all. I think that bottom of A is the absolute lowest I would want to go.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's right about where I would put him. I do think Set is a champion that is very heavily punished by missing skill shots, quote unquote skill shots.
Hmm.
If he misses his pull or he misses his W, or he ults someone and they flash in the other direction, so then
Hmm.
he like actually like throws them into safety. There's a lot of ways to like kind of screw up with Set. Um, yeah, I do think the main problem right now is people just not getting off of the Blade of the Ruined King. I think Blade of the Ruined King is, don't get me wrong, not a bad item. In certain matchups, it's great, but I know, like, for a fact, his Stride Breaker and Gore Drinker builds are just better for him right now.
Hmm.
It's just this weird situation where people can't get off a suboptimal item,
And
and I do think
that
that
happens a
affects rate
lot,
that.
especially like
Yeah,
down in like the silver to gold level 100%. There's like a lot of people will be like, this is what you build on this champion. It's what you've built for 3 years. This is what you build. And it's like, the item, whatever it is, may still be okay, like Bork on Set. But there are just the way that the items currently are in the game, and on most champions, you can change your build based on the game. There are some that have a specific core item that you need, but most champions, Set included, you can build based on what's actually happening in the game, and not enough people do that.
well, yeah, a really good example of that is like Caitlyn and Rapid Fire.
Hmm.
Like people have not been able to get off this like Rapid Fire second on Caitlyn,
Hmm.
and they just build it. I want it's harder now because you can build IE second, which I think has finally like pushed people off the like Rapid Fire second in a
Hmm.
lot of instances. However, before that happened, it was just her most popular second item. People would not get off it, and it was her lowest win rate second item.
Hmm.
Like it was better to build Phantom Dancer, it was better to build BT, it was better to build Storm Razor, it was better to build Collector. It was just her worst second item, but
Hmm.
because people couldn't get off of it, her win rate just like suffered tremendously.
Hmm.
So it's kind of the same thing with Set where I think Blade probably not the end of the world. Um, however, I just don't think it's probably even his best item second, and I think it is dragging his win rate down
Hmm.
and his effectiveness overall as a champion down.
I agree. Like I said, he's in that vote of like pantheon and stuff where he's a good champion. He's just not broken and he's not bad. He's just
Yep.
a good champion. All right. So Sejuani. So my hot take of Sejuani is on this list because people have been playing it in pro play this past year into like certain matchups and stuff. I think that, in my opinion, you play Sejuani because you're wanting to have playmaking ganks like from the jungle Sejuani. I think that playing her in the top lane while she's still like a good champion with a good kit, I feel like what you want from a top laner, Sejuani just isn't that in most games. So I feel like that she's like, I don't think Sejuani top's bad, but I think it can be kind of troll if you're forcing it.
She does have some matchups I really hate. Mordekaiser, Trundle being two of them, where I feel like those are pretty bad. I know, like, so as a tank, she's a good tank.
Yeah.
However, she loses the 1v1 into like every tank in the game.
Hmm.
So she's super valuable as a tank answer to non-tanks. However, I'd probably rather have her than Kennen,
I think I'm pretty
I
okay with
think.
that.
Yeah, I think there's so much CC in her kit. As long as you're not inting lane phase, I think she's pretty good. I don't think she's better than probably any other tank. In terms of like, you don't pick her for a tank v tank matchup.
Hmm.
You pick her for like they picked Jace or they picked Gangplank or they picked um Renekton or something, and you're just playing a don't die champion with lots of crowd control, and you couldn't pick like Malphite or Maokai or Ornn or whatever.
Yeah, or like
Um,
I feel like you also do it in the scenario of like you left top for like last pick or second to last pick, and you're like not paying attention in champ select, and you're like, oh, I don't have engage from any of the things that we've picked so far. We need some kind of
yep,
engage from somewhere. And then you're like, okay, Sejuani, I guess. I think she can fit in like that scenario, but I think
very good with
there's just
champions
better
like
stuff.
Braum. Very good with like lots of melee champions as
Hmm.
well. So I think that is the thing as well. The more melee champions you have on your team, the better this champion becomes.
Hmm.
There's nothing that feels better than like attacking Baron and you're proccing her E every like 0.5 seconds.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, in general, I think there are way better tanks, but I do think she does do a very good job at what she is supposed to do. As in being like that counter pick for those like super aggressive top laners.
So Shin. I I want to put Shin as S because I think that with the right Shin player, that Shin just completely changes the landscape of a game. But I think that most Shin players are not that person, and I think that they either ult at the wrong time, teleport at the wrong time, whatever it may be. I want to put him at like better than some other options because I think that if you're bad at using the ultimate or you're bad at TPing, or you don't really understand how to like match split pushers or things like that, I think that if you're not good at like the stuff that makes Shin good, I think that he's just like a B tier champion.
I think he's like top of B for me. I do think Shen wins against a lot of the tanks. Like Shen is your anti-tank tank.
Hmm.
If you're playing a tank and or if your team he's a hyper carry enabler by giving them the fattest shield they've ever seen in their whole life.
Hmm.
He makes enchanters look like they don't know how to shield people. He's very good peel. He has a very strong early game. He has a lot of good things going for him. However, man, I think that Shen is a lot better than he looks. But if you're playing Ross, if you're duoing, I think he's fantastic. Like if
Hmm.
you're duoing with a jungler, I think he's probably top 3 best champions to play with when duoing with a top laner because you could smash his lane or you can 4-man bot or do these other things.
Hmm.
If you're playing raw solo queue, I think this champion is not that great because you have to actively be watching other maps to figure out when you need to be useful. And a lot of the times, if you're playing in matchups where you're losing 2 minion waves and a plate for like saving someone's life, you're actually trading down in gold a lot.
Hmm.
Um,
Especially
so
in like solo queue, a lot of the time if you're like ulting your bot lane or something and they aren't expecting it, like if you're not spam pinging or something ahead of time and they get low, they're gonna be just running away, and then by the time you get there, you can't turn the fight. The fight's just over. So like you said, you saved them, but then that's it, and you're just recalling and going back to your lane. So you're
yep,
not
and
getting anything from it.
yeah, the only thing you get is now if you get kills off of it, some of these other things, I think it's really good. But I think a good Shen player being smart about when to use his ultimate and peeling and other things, I think is really good. I would say Shen is a champion where if you're duoing with him, I would put him like above Jax in A tier. Um, as a raw solo queue champion, I think he's just an anti-tank champion for the most part. I think he's really good against Ornn. He's really good against a lot of these tanks at just shutting them down early, generating a pretty good lead, global map presence, a lot of things like that. But I do think he is a duo abusing champion, and I think he is less valuable without a duo.
Yeah, I think so too. Like I said, I think that in the right scenarios, like having a duo or being in competitive where you have voice chat, he can be S. Because I think Shin is one that like a Shin ult turns a losing fight into a winning fight. But I think that in most scenarios, he's like a B tier champion. All right, so we have Singed. Um, I'm a little jaded with Singed right now because the ones that I've had recently have just went 0-10 proxied and then been useless on my team. And then even on the enemy team when they're ahead, it just feels like Singe doesn't really do anything besides be annoying. He's not gonna like, even if he like hard wins his lane, he's not gonna carry the game or anything most of the time. He's just gonna be an annoying champion that flanks and stuff. So I don't really want to put him above like C. I think that he's like a can be kind of troll.
I think he's a. I think he's either bottom of C or D. I think he's a great one trick champion. I I think outside of that, don't play him.
Mhm.
I think he is. I have not seen him be the reason why his team is winning very often.
Yeah, even when ahead.
Um, even when ahead, I remember a few games where Singe just 1v9 the entire game and it was crazy. But like I'm like, wow, that was such a long time ago. It's been such a long time since I've seen a Singe really be the reason why his team is winning. That being said, Singe has some really good matchups. I think for the people that one trick him, I think he's a fine one trick. But the people that play him kind of loosely, I think those people are trolling, and yeah, it's really rough. But yeah, it's going to be a champion. There are going to be better options that do what he does better than he does.
Mhm.
Um, and I just think I don't like seeing Singed on my team, and I honestly don't mind seeing them on the enemy team because most of them just proxy and grief.
Yeah.
So
Most of them are just I watched a YouTube video, I'm gonna proxy, and then that's all they do the entire game.
yeah,
And then speaking of people who play like Singed but do it better, I think that Scion is just the better version of Singed, to be honest.
yep.
I think that he can do all the same things and then also takes towers faster.
I think I'd put him even like below Riven. I think this champion is really solid. He's a very good tank. His wave clear is really strong. His frontline presence is really strong. And
Mhm.
when he dies, you still have to run away from him, which
Mhm.
means even when you kill him in a team fight, you have to be afraid of him for another like 5, 6, 7 seconds.
His passive is basically like a better Kog'Maw passive, to be honest.
It is. I do think in general he can be really, really hard to kill. And even when you do kill him, you have to run away.
Mhm.
The main thing I don't know which build is better right now for the Scion, the lethality versus the normal, but I just have seen a lot of even the like lethality Scions just die and then murder everyone.
Mhm.
Um yeah.
And even if he
I
doesn't get kills, if he dies and he's like trying to stop a Baron or something, he can like do enough damage to force the enemy team off a Baron. Like he can save objectives and stuff even like while dying.
Yep. I do think he is a champion that is very strong right now. I don't necessarily know if I would, yeah, I definitely wouldn't put him above kind of any of the tanks above him. I would in some situations, maybe I prefer Sejuani over him, but I think in most situations, I feel really good about having a Scion on my team.
Yeah, same. Like I said, I think he plays sort of like a Singed, but he's just the better version of Singed.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Okay. So Swain is another one that I put on here, sort of like Rumble, where there was a time that he was played top a lot, and now it's not his main role anymore. Um, I think that with Swain, so I'm huge on Swain as a champion, and I think that you play him because he's really good into melee champions, like really really good into him. Like I think that in the right hands, he can beat most of the A and S tier melee champions. Um, but for what he brings to the game from top lane, I don't think he's that good of a top lane champion. I think that he's like a better than some other options, but not a top tier top laner.
Yeah, I'd probably put him. I might even put him just below, above Kennen. Maybe actually is probably about. That's about where he's at for me.
Mhm,
I think that he can win lane, and it's great when he does. I think he has a lot of value even when he doesn't win lane. He doesn't need too much gold to at least be annoying.
mhm,
He's not very lane dominant. At least he hasn't been in recent years. He doesn't scale as hard as his scalers. I think he's a really solid like mid game champion.
mhm.
Um, Realistically, if I was recommending a champ pool for someone top lane, I don't think I would even think to add Swain. So yeah, I think more
Yeah.
bottom of B is a pretty good spot for him.
So he's like a basically to sum him up for me is like a as far as comparing him to like the top tier champions, they all either are very very strong duelists who like win almost every matchup, or have something in their kit that is completely game changing, like Malphite alt, Mordekaiser alt, Kled alt, Orin's ornaments. Like they all have things that are just completely change the landscape of the game. And Swain doesn't have anything like that in his kit. He has a good kit, but nothing game changing. And then he's not winning every matchup either. So that's why I think bottom of B fits him pretty well. But I
Yep.
also agree that he's not been played as top being his main role in a very long time. So he's not like I don't think most people would even put him on their top lane list. I think he's playable there, but I don't think that he's really a top laner.
Yeah, I agree. I think with the changes to his passive and other things, he just fits the support APC role a lot better than even like mid lane nowadays.
Mhm,
Just because of how much health he can stack. Like I think APC is probably still his best role.
mhm,
And it's not where we see him the most, but he definitely gets a lot of value out of just getting the pulls, getting the stacks.
mhm. I probably have like somewhere in the 30 to 40 games this season range on him on both support and like APC bottom. And I think he's really strong in both of those roles just because he's really good into all the champions that get played in the bot lane. But as far in like other roles, he's just not. He doesn't have the power to be like a carry from those roles, really.
Yep, I do think that there are definitely he's definitely a good like anti-tank champion.
Mhm.
I think he
He
wins a lot of tank matchups
he
for
wins
sure.
trades at the very least. He
Yep.
may not like 100% stomp the tanks, but if the tank whiffs like their one important ability, like the Mordekaiser grab or the cho'gath Q or whatever, like he can win trades in lane pretty easily. But then they're all going to be more useful later than he is, though.
Yep. And that's why I do think his value might be higher than this list just because he's a mid game champion, which is where most games end.
Hmm.
But I do think in general, um, unless you really love Swain, I don't think it's like as valuable.
Hmm. Same. So Tom Kinch. I like the current iteration of Tom's kit. What they did with like swapping the ultimate and everything. However, anytime that I have Tom top lane on my team, I've seen him absolutely destroy some tank top laners. Like I've seen him beat Ornn, I've seen him beat Malphite, I've seen him beat Mordekaiser, I've seen him beat Maokai Cho. I've seen him win those lanes pretty hard. But then I've also seen that same person who was ahead hit like 35, 40 minutes into the game, and just the champion does less than their champions. So much so that like we just talked about with Swain, where he doesn't really do anything game changing. I think that a 10-0 winning lane Swain top lane is infinitely more useful than a 10-0 winning lane Tom Kench top lane. And for that fact, I would want to put him in the kind of troll. I think that you pick him because he's oppressive and he's fun to play into these tanks and stuff. But I think that he's just, even if you get super super ahead because you countered the top laner with him, I think that he just doesn't carry most games.
Yeah, yeah, I can agree with that. I think he does like I think his numbers aren't bad, but I just think that's because he's one tricked. I think he can be oppressive. I think if you can be lane dominant on him and learn how to take those smart trades, I think he can be a little bit disgusting in a lot of matchups.
Mhm.
However, yeah, I do think he has virtually no late game compared to most champions. His mid game is only good with a lead. Um, But overall, I'm gonna stick with kind of troll. I do think that a good Tom Kench pushes probably low A,
Hmm.
but I think your average Tom Kench is just like a meat shield,
Hmm.
and meat shields aren't that great.
I think so. I think with like everything we've said in mind, I think where he shines the most is if you're picking him because you know that you straight up win the matchup and you're trying to be a deterrent from the enemy top laner becoming the ticking time bomb. It's the like, yeah, your late game isn't that strong, but if your entire job is to just hard win early so that way the enemy top laner doesn't hit their late game very quickly, then that's where Tom shines. So like if you're trying to keep the enemy top laner from being strong at 25 minutes. And instead, you're trying to push them to the 35-40 minute mark. And that's why you're playing Tom to keep the enemy top laner from getting gold. Then I think that's where he fits the best at. But I don't think that he's a carry from the top
Yep. I think it's a great counter pick. I think in his counter picks, he feels fantastic.
lane.
Outside of those counter picks, I think is way less valuable.
Hmm.
So I think in general, he's troll. In good counter picks, I think he's very good.
Hmm.
I don't prefer seeing Tom Kench on my team, but I will say I've definitely seen some Tom Kenches just run over games.
Hmm.
I do think he does a better job of running over games by himself than a lot of tanks do.
Hmm.
But I do think that, yeah, I unless it's a counter matchup, I'd never play him.
Hmm. Okay. So we have Timo. So something that you don't know about me, I don't think, is the first 3 seasons of League of Legends, I mained Timo and Pantheon. Those are the only champions I played. So if I still had my main account, I would probably be a 500,000 mastery Teemo player right now. That being said, I have not played him in years outside of ARAM, and he is a champion that I would want to put at F because I don't want him on my team because he doesn't do what top laners do. He doesn't bring things to the team. He doesn't bring utility. He doesn't bring like game changing ultimates, but he's also a someone I don't want on the enemy team because while I think that Timo's not a good top laner for the role, I think that if you hit that mid game to late game and Timo has gold, he makes it very hard for your team, even when ahead, to get to objectives because of his shrooms. That if the Timo plays it correctly, he can be incredibly annoying. But I would rather have almost any other champion in my top lane than Timo.
I agree. If we're talking about power level, he's probably bottom of A.
Hmm.
Um, but I hate seeing him on my team. This champion is useless from behind. Outside of like very specific instances where like the Teemo's just focusing on like setting up. I feel like that's like the strat for Teemo. If you're behind, just set up a bunch of shrooms around the objectives and don't even
Hmm.
care about farm.
Hmm.
I think that's a very not fun play style to play against, and it's not very fun to play with either. I just don't enjoy playing with or against Teemo. I think Teemo is by nature of being a range poke harass top laner, a good top laner. I think he is probably the best range top laner in the game.
Yeah.
Um, but I hate the champion. I hate seeing him on my team. I'm okay with him being an F because I just feel like a bad Teemo is useless.
Hmm.
And most Teemos play Teemo. I think people also play Teemo to troll a lot, which is also something that can kind of drag his
Absolutely.
win rate down, maybe. But
That's my issue is a lot of people who even like a one trick Timo in our elo. So in gold ish in our elo, even whenever somebody has like mastery 7 Timo, tons of mastery, and you like go look at their account, they like are a huge Timo fan with a 43% win rate on it. They'll have like 100 games of Timo, 43% win rate. And they're not trolling, but they're just playing it because they like the champion, whether the champion is good or not. So that's why I don't like seeing him.
I think Teemo is probably bottom of A in terms of power level. But yeah, he's one of those champions I just prefer not to see in my games on either side.
Hmm.
I'm not afraid of playing like laning against a Teemo when I play top lane.
Hmm.
But I don't. Yeah, I just don't feel like this champion is very interactive. I definitely feel like second wind plus Doran's um So you can build Second Wind, Door and Shield, and the component for Spirit Visage, and Teemo's autos will like basically heal you,
Mhm.
and it just ruins Teemo and the entire matchup. So if you're like playing a tank, for example, you just do that setup, and like Teemo is no longer kind of able to play the game. I feel like if people did that more often, then Teemo's win rate would just plummet. But people don't, because people don't adapt runes or like their items and things like that. I feel like that also inflates Teemo's win rate a little bit as well.
Mhm.
Proper itemization in this champion just doesn't do anything.
So the caveat I'll give as a, like I said, a used to be Teemo main is that I think that if you love Teemo and you want to play him, I don't think the top lane's the move. I think that you should. I think the best place that if you absolutely want to play Teemo, go play him in support against auto attack heavy ADCs. Play him against Ashe, play him against Callista, play him against champions like that, and you can take a lane where your ADC is supposed to get shit on and turn it into just your ADC wins every trade. So like if you are one of those 500k mastery teamos and you love playing the champion, just stop playing a top lane. That's my advice.
Yeah, I think the champion has an inflated win rate, but I think it's probably bottom of a power level.
Mhm.
Top for at least.
So Trundle. I think that overall, Trundle's a champion, especially if the enemy team has a lot of melees and a lot of tanks. I think that Trundle's pretty solid. Um, I don't know how matchups go for Trundle as far as top lane goes, because usually I see him played in like jungle. But I feel like in the scenarios where you're not first picking it, I think that he's good in most games. So like, the lowest I would want to put him is like bottom of A.
Man, I don't know if this is his meta. I feel like he's been kind of weak for a while. I love Trundle.
Mhm.
I'm a massive fan of Trundle. I I don't know if this is his meta. I think Trundle is kind of unironically kind of troll right now. I think he used to be really, really, really good jungle.
Mhm.
But his nerf aimed to bring his I think it was aimed to bring his jungle down. Maybe it was to bring his top lane down. Hit top lane really hard, whether it was intending to or not.
Mhm.
I don't remember which way they were trying to nerf it. Um, I think he's probably one of the worst top laners in the game right now
Mhm.
in terms of champions that like I don't even know if people even really think of him as a top laner anymore
I think
either.
it's mostly jungle. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think he is probably bad. He in my mind, I sometimes think of him as not being that bad because of how good he used to be.
Uh-huh.
Um, right now, I don't see Trundles do very much. I don't see them winning lane. I don't see them carrying games. It's like they are a pillar bot,
Mhm.
which to me, I think I would rather see most champions in the game right now than Trundle.
Mhm. So I'm gonna defer to you as far as like kicking him out of A and moving him down to like B or C. The one thing that I will say is like if we're moving him down, right, I'm looking at like the C, like kind of troll, if that's like around where we're landing him, I think I'd rather see him more than all of them besides like Poppy and Kel, to be honest, of
I
the
agree.
ones that we have in
Yeah,
C.
yeah, I can agree with that. I do think his one shining light is I do think he's very good into cho'gath. I think
Hmm.
he's very good into Aurelia with Pillar. I think he's very good into I'm trying to think of the other ones. I think he's a pretty good Darius like in Scion counter as well. But I will say, in terms of anti cho'gath champions, he is probably like the anti cho'gath champion.
Hmm.
Um, Absolutely destroys that matchup. But in general, I just don't think he's very strong.
Yeah, I'm pretty okay with that. And so like I have opinions on Trundle, but even whenever I like play top lane and stuff, he's not a champion that I play. So that's why I'm pretty okay moving him down here because I don't have super strong feelings about him. So I think it's fine moving him down to C.
I think he used to be like mid A for a really long time.
Hmm.
It's just been the last probably 6 months to a year that he's really just kind of fallen off.
Hmm. All right. So Tryndamere, like short and sweet. I think Tryndamere is a worse Fiora. I think they fit
Yeah,
the exact same role and that she's better at it.
I think if you want to main Trendemir, play him mid lane. I think he's very, 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 very good mid lane. I think he's probably A or S tier mid lane.
Hmm.
I think he's pretty shit top lane. Just play him. Like, if you want to play Trendemir, play him mid lane. He's much better there.
Hmm.
Go watch some like Nemesis videos or like whatever. Go play him mid lane. Um, I think even Nice is like playing him mid lane now. I'm trying to think of like the big Trendemir people. Um, Much better mid laner than top laner. Yeah, he's somewhere in the like don't pick unless you're one trick. And even if you're a one trick, just go play a mid lane. Better
Hmm.
role, easier
Hmm.
time.
Right. So I put Udyr on here. I think he's incredibly off meta. The only reason I put him on here is an anecdote because a top laner that I played with, one trick Udyr top lane to gold. So that's why I put him on the list, was for that one guy specifically. I think that you just don't pick it unless you're one trick. I don't think it's a reliable top lane champion at all.
Yeah, I agree.
But I put it on here just for him, and that's about all I have to say about it.
No, I completely agree with you. I
Okay.
think he is definitely a like don't pick. He might even be an FF at 20. He's pretty
Yep.
close to one of those two,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
I'll say he's probably viable enough that I'll keep him in like one trickable. But he's I Udyr jungle very good. Udyr top, don't do it.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
worth it. Don't lose your sanity over it.
Don't don't hard force the Udyr top lane. All
Agreed,
right.
agreed.
So Urgot. So I know that back, maybe it was season 7, somewhere between like season 7 or 9, it was like Aatrox, Urgot were the two champions top lane that like people picked back and forth with each other. And I think that like even though it's been a long time since that's been a thing, I think that they still sort of fill the same niche, but I think Urgot does it better. I would want to put Urgot like around the Jax Pantheon area.
I might even put him below set, but I'd put him somewhere around there. I think anywhere between. I wouldn't put him above Jax
Hmm.
because I think his Jax is where you start hitting like A plus area.
Yeah.
But I would definitely say he's around that like set to Pantheon level is
Hmm.
probably right where he's around. I still think he's a solid champion. I still think he does what he wants to do very well. I do think he struggles against like some of the better champions. I don't think he carries as hard as some other champions above him.
Hmm.
But I think he's still a solid champion. I just think most people don't enjoy his playstyle, and that's why he doesn't get a lot of games right now.
Yeah. I agree. I think he's a good champion. He usually doesn't take over games or anything like that, but he's just overall solid. And like I said, he does the same things as like Aatrox. He's like a better Aatrox, a worse Aurelia, sort of.
Yep.
All right. So Vlad. Um so as far as like the AP champions that we've talked about so far, and even like the health champions, like thinking about it as like just what you want from a top lane, tankiness wise, Vlad sits in the same role as like Dr. Mundo as far as tank goes, because he's not really building like high resistances, he's building like damage and health. And I think in that vein of him being top lane, I think that he's worse than Dr. Mundo. I think that he's like a don't pick unless you're just very good at him.
I think power wise, he's probably like somewhere around like a Laoi Shen, but I think he is a one of those champions like Trendemir, where I would probably almost put him in D in the sense of like
He needs to be played mid.
he needs to be played mid. Just go play him mid.
Yeah.
If you're playing Vladimir to play Vladimir, go play Vladimir mid lane.
Hmm.
If you're playing Vladimir as a counter matchup, I think there are matchups he's good in, but that's just top lane.
So
Um,
hear me out. Since we're saying this about both Trend and Vlad, right? Like if you're just playing them because you really like playing the champion, you're experienced on them. I think that Swain is the same thing, and we put Swain down there with Trend and Vlad.
Yep, I agree. I think Swain is also very good top, to be honest. I just think APC is his best role right now,
Hmm.
and no one plays him there for whatever reason, but that is his best role right now.
Hmm.
Um, and if you're playing Swain because you enjoy Swain, just go play him APC,
Hmm.
shit on literally everyone,
Hmm.
and you're fine.
Yeah. All right. So Volibear. I put Volibear on here because I love Nasher's Tooth Rush Volibear in every role. So I put him on the top lane list. I don't have a lot of experience into like matchups and stuff. On the fun level, AP Volibear S tier. On the like viability level, Volibear might be kind of troll, especially if you're
Full
hard forcing AP.
full tank Volibear is probably right below Shen,
Hmm.
in between Shen and Alawi. Like I
Hmm.
think it's actually very good.
Hmm.
AP volley is kind of troll. Just stop playing it, people, please. For the like, just please
That's
stop.
every
Please
game
stop
I
doing
play
it.
of him is AP Volley.
Just,
Every game.
just please stop. Don't do it. You don't need to. I think he's underrated as a jungler right now, but I have some personal bias for Volibear jungle.
Hmm.
But I do think Volibear top tank is decent.
Hmm.
I do think that the top lane matchup is not that hard to play. I think he has some decent matchups. He loses to like some things. He does like beat Aurelia really hard, for example. He does beat Set pretty hard. Trendemir, there's some other champions.
And
I
he's
do
not
think
hard
it's
to
just
play,
he is not hard to play. Just for the love of the Lord, stop building AP. It is his worst first item.
bro.
It
But
is his
Nasher's
worst
Tooth
second
though.
item. Just go build him full tank. Like W max into tank matchups and love your life. I think it's actually just W max top lane. It's like WQ anyway.
Mhm.
But yeah, just please stop playing him AP top lane and throwing all my ranked games. Thank you for all you AP volley enjoyers.
All right. So we've got Yasuo. So I kind of feel the same way about Yasuo as I do Trin, Swain, and Vlad. I think that Yasuo is a really good champion. I think if you just really want to play Yasuo, I think you just go play a mid lane. I think that
I think
he's
I think him and his brother are the exact same, to be honest. Even Yone, same thing. Go
mhm,
play them in mid lane. They're better mid lane.
mhm,
I honestly think that I don't even think their win rates are good. Like I think they get shafted by like most matchups top lane.
mhm.
Um the ones they win are not like the matchups that you're going to be playing against most commonly. Yeah. I think Yasuo is a pretty decent Yorick counter.
Mhm.
Like that can be a fun one, but like other than that, just probably not.
Mhm. Okay. So the last one we have is Yorick. So I think that Yorick is S tier, and my reasoning is I think that as far as split pushing champions go in the game, he is the premier split pushing champion because of how his kit works. I think that there are other champions who can like carry a lot harder than Yorick, but I think that like Yorick TPing into a lane with his ultimate up with 3 or 4 items, he can take all the enemy's towers before they know what's happening if they're in the middle of fighting your team. I think that he is just the best split pushing champion in the game.
Ah, man, where do I This is a hard one for me
Hmm.
because Yorick bottom of S, I'm going to say nah. I don't think so. I think he's above Yorick or above Urgot
Hmm.
in A tier. I think he loses to Set. He loses to Aurelia. He loses to Gwen. He loses to a lot of these other champions. Now, man, does he win everything else hard enough that like I think he is the best split pusher in the game.
Hmm.
I will say that. By far, Yorick is like the best split pusher in the game. I
Hmm.
know.
I think
Oh,
Jax
it's
may
like
be second, just out of like whenever he gets
yeah,
like high attack speed and stuff.
Jax is definitely second. I'm gonna say he's probably somewhere between bottom of S, top of A. He's
Hmm.
somewhere in there. I think the champion is strong. I just think the fact that Aurelia and Jax counterpick him so hard
Hmm.
and make his life so unplayable is a little unfortunate.
So
And that's the one thing. Like you can't if you blind Yorick, I think a blindable Yorick is very punishable, but I do think he is the best split pusher in the game.
mhm. So I think so while I think that he's S, I think that a good compromise would be so if we move him down here to A, I think like looking at the A champions, I think the first 4 need to be reordered a little bit. I think that as far as like these first four champions go, Camille, Aurelia, Yorick, Cho, I think that Cho is top of A no matter what. I think that he's just that's where he goes.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
okay with that.
so I think as long as we move Cho up there, so he's not below Yorick, I'm okay with Yorick being like the middle of A. Like I would rather see a Yorick than Maokai because I just don't like Maokai that much. And then I think that Jax carries a lot harder. He's like a hyper carry, but Yorick pushes a lot harder. So
I think
like
Yorick wins games without killing people. I think Jax wins games with killing people. Like
yeah,
a 0-4 Yorick can still carry a game by
yeah.
just split pushing properly.
Hmm.
A like 0-4 Jax is like not carrying a game. That's kind of where
Yeah.
I would have them.
Yeah, it's the skill ceiling versus skill floor argument, right? Like
Yep.
it's
I think that the skill floor on Yorick is pretty low. I think he's a pretty overall easy
pretty
to play
high,
champion.
you mean. Skill floor
Yeah,
is
yeah,
high.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know
Yeah.
what I mean.
Yeah.
He's a definitely a lot harder to mess up
Yeah.
and a lot more forgiving.
Hmm. But just won't carry as hard as the 10-0 Jax will.
Yep. But the thing is, you can just be 0-5 and you can still win the game.
Yeah.
So like welcome to that champion.
All right.
But yeah, overall, do we want to review the list and see if we want to make any changes after we've kind of seen things some more?
Um, the only one I really wanted to change was moving that cho'gath up. The way that the game has been the last like 2 or 3 months or so, I think cho'gath is just real strong. I don't think that he does enough to call him S, but I think that there's just almost never a game that he's bad in. So
Yeah.
moving him up to the top of A, I'm real happy about. Um, I'm happy with moving the Swain down into the like. If you're gonna play him, just go play him in another role. He's a good champion, but he's just
Yeah.
not a top laner really. Um,
I agree. I think, yeah, in general, I think I'm pretty happy with it. I hate putting Gangplank that low. That just makes me sad. I think Gangplank is really good. I just think the average person just can't play Gangplank.
yeah,
Like it's not like yeah, and that's what hurts my soul. Because in my mind, I'm like, he's definitely not a bad champion, but I think overall, I'm pretty comfortable with where things are. There are some champions, um, where you're looking at kind of like Alawi, and Nar and these other champions.
mhm,
And it's kind of like you could probably make some arguments for them being maybe a little lower or even a little higher.
mhm.
But I think overall it's a pretty good power level for kind of where they are.
Yeah. There's several like team comps or games where a lot of these champions can either like go up 2 tiers or go down 2 tiers depending on who you're playing against. But I think this is a good like average of where most of them are at. I think that
Yeah.
most of them in most games are going to be where they're at on this list, at least for
I might almost even put I might almost even move Shen up to bottom of A. I think Shen is kind of a cut above the rest of the champions that are in B.
mhm,
I just think, yeah, I think just because of how good he is into the like S tiers,
mhm.
and just as a, he probably might be bottom of A for me instead. That is like a very minor change. Obviously, he still
So
doesn't change in order.
looking at the bottom of A, like the champions that are there, I actually would want to put them like behind Set, above like Garen, Aatrox, Olaf.
Yeah, I can agree with that. And a
Uh,
lot of this is going to come down to like mastery as well, right? Like mastery of a champion is going to be really important here. There are some champions that when you master, they can jump up from like B to S. Or some champions, it's like even when you master them, you're just not going to get that much better at them comparatively to other champions.
mhm. And that in that vein, I would say like the Nasus that we have, it's like you can be a great Nasus, but if you're against a team who like groups, you're not going to do that much most of the time.
Yep, I agree.
All
Top
right.
lane is always going to be a counter pick lane, so the most important thing to like recognize when picking top lane is that some champions are just going to be a lot better blind picks than others. That is kind of what makes Ornn the king.
Mhm.
So, but they're all really viable.
Basically, if you're picking anything from like A to S in most games, I think that you're going to have a good time. Think like there are some things that could be iffy, but you do A to S, you're looking at like winning more games than you're losing.
No, I actually completely agree with you. I think A to S, if I see any of those champions on my team, I'm gonna feel pretty good about like I'm not gonna get tilted based on just what people are picking.
Mhm. Yep. All right. Well, it looks like we're done with top lane. So we intend to do all the different roles. We're gonna cut them up into separate videos, but I'm gonna bring Sin back on here, and then we'll do the rest of them. So thanks for coming and helping me with this. I appreciate it.
No problem. It's super fun. I enjoy talking about it.
If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate any likes or comments or subscriptions. We're going to be making a lot more video game content and art related content on this channel, so stay around. Thanks.